Welcome everybody. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how you can modify Excel's blank workbook template so that every time you open up Excel, the template has all of the modifications and settings you desire. To start with, I'm going to show you on my computer, when I open up Excel, I get the grid lines, and if I type in a letter and hit File Print, you can see there are no headers and footers set up at all. So this is just a standard default blank workbook like all of us have when we install Excel. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a File Explorer window and I'm going to search for, on my C drive, the Excel Start folder. So let's do that. Excel Start. Now on my computer it takes about 65 seconds for it to go through and find all of the Start folders I'm looking for. But when I find it, it's going to usually find 2 folders or more depending on how many versions of Excel you've installed. And then it's important to pick the correct one. You'll see it's already found the Excel Start shortcut, which is not what I'm looking for. So give it just a couple more minutes. And there's going to be one that's associated with the Excel, your version of Excel, and there's another one associated with your user account. And you can see right here, this is the one we want, and I'll let it stop so you can see both of my folders, and then I'll point out which one you're looking for. So at the top, you see the Excel Start folder here says users / Carlton Collins, and that's an indicator that's the one I want because it's associated with my user account. And then there's another one that's associated with my program files, and that one actually will work with the book file, but you're probably cleaner if you use the Excel Start associated with your user. So let's get into that one right there. I'm going to make a note of where that is. Users, Carlton Collins, app data, roaming, Microsoft Excel, and I'm going to push this to the side on my other monitor temporarily. Now what we want to do is open up an Excel, blank Excel document, and we want to make the modifications that we want for our default Excel workbook. And so, for example, I'm not a fan of the grid lines, so I'll take those off. The next thing I want to do is I want to put some headers and footers in there. So I'll come over to the Page Layout tab and I'll choose the drop down next to Page Setup to launch the Page Setup screen. And then on the Header Footer tab, I'll click the Custom Header button, and with my cursor situated in the left section, I'm going to click on the File Path and File Name icon. And then on the right side, I'm going to click on the Date and Time icons and click OK. Now I'll click on Custom Footer, and in the center I'll click on the Insert Page Number icon, type space of space, and then I'll click on the Insert Page Numbers icon. I'll click OK and OK, and now I've set up the headers and the footers the way I want them to appear. Let me demonstrate that to you. I'll type a letter. We'll come over here to File, Print. You can see the headers and the footer are popping up right there for me. Let's delete that H. Now the last thing that I like to do, because I use pivot tables a lot, is I like to set the defaults of my pivot tables. And to do that, I'm going to have to set up a quick pivot table. And so this is the smallest pivot table just about that you could make. Insert Pivot Table. And you need to make a pivot table like this so that your pivot table tools appear at the top of the screen. That's why I'm doing this, and so that your pivot table is there. I can now right mouse click on my pivot table and choose Pivot Table Options. And then I'm going to uncheck the box that says Auto Fit Column Widths, and then I'm going to make sure that the Preserve Cell Formatting is checked on. Now by making these adjustments, what will happen is every time in the future that I create a pivot table and refresh that pivot table or change that pivot table by adding fields or deleting fields, it's not going to reformat every time. It'll stay exactly how I have it situated and set. Then also I'm going to come over here to the Display tab and click on Sort A to Z instead of the default Sort in Data Source Order. Now what happens is, by default, Excel sorts pivot tables based on the order of your source data, which may just happen to be scrambled. But you may want to sort your pivot table by the alphabet, so I'll make this minor adjustment as well. Once I've made that minor adjustment, I can delete my pivot table and the data. So it's just, I'll hit the delete here. Actually, I can delete sheet 2 completely. And then on sheet 1, I'll delete that data as well. So now I've made all the adjustments that I want to make to my workbook, and now I'm ready to save it. And here's the trick. File, Save As, and we want to save this on my PC as an Excel template. And that's the trick. And I want to save it to my Excel Start folder that we talked about. And I want to call it Book. But here's the problem. Here's what happens. When we go to our users, Carlton Collins, app data, roaming, Microsoft, let's see if I can figure it, Excel, you were ahead of me, there you go, and then Excel Start, and then I save it as a file called Book, as an Excel template. Let's choose that one. Notice that it keeps popping me back over here to this location. So let's try it again. We'll come back over to Carlton Collins, app data, roaming, come down to Microsoft, down to Excel, down to Excel Start, and now it's saving as Excel template. And that's what we want. And then I click Save. So I've successfully saved that Excel file called Book to the correct folder, but it took a little effort because when you set the type of the file, Excel automatically tries to force you to save it into your custom folder. Now there's another problem that could happen to you, and that is your permission settings may not allow you to save directly to the Excel Start folder like I just did. And in this case, just save it somewhere else and then copy and paste it over into your Excel Start folder. But we've made that change, and now let's close Excel and have a look and see what happens. When I click Excel, it still pops up with the old grid line version. That's not what I wanted, and that's because we have to make another change. Under File Options, on the General tab, we need to scroll down and tell it, do not show the start screen when this application starts. Now let's try it all again. Click on Excel, and you can see there are no grid lines. If I type a letter in and hit File Print, you will see the headers and the footers are automatically there, and as are my pivot table defaults as well. So I've now successfully put in modifications to the default workbook file that opens. But now watch this. If I want to add a sheet and I click the plus sign adds a new sheet, sheet 2, and it has the grid lines. It doesn't have the defaults that we just talked about. And so that's a problem because I'm going to want to add sheets, and I want those new sheets I add to also have the same defaults. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to close this down. I'm going to reopen that file, and I wanted to make sure that this file only has one sheet, which it does, and one sheet only. And then I'm going to do a File, Save As on this PC. I want to save it as a Excel template again, and I want to browse to, we're going to call this one Sheet, and I want to browse to the App Data, Roaming, Microsoft, Excel, Excel Start folder, and we'll call this Sheet. Okay, and let's save that. Oh, it's got to be a template. See how it just jumps the type back and forth? I almost made that mistake. Excel template. So I'm making a template. Notice it changed my path again. So let's go back again to Carlton Collins, Data, Roaming, Microsoft, Excel, Excel Start, it's called Sheet, and let's hit Save. It's an Excel template, and we hit Save. And so now let's add a sheet and see how that works. And maybe I should have closed this out before I did that. After adding sheet without closing Excel, I punked myself here. Sorry about that. Maybe I did that as a warning, but let's try it again. Click. Excel opens properly. Let's add a new sheet, and the sheet 2 comes up, and there's no grid lines. If I type in some data and hit File Print, you'll see there's the headers and footers on sheet 2. And so I've now successfully set up the new book and the new sheet default files so that when I launch Excel, I'll have all the default settings the way I like them. Give this a try. I hope you find it helpful.